In May 2011, where were you living at that time?
At that time, I was living in Fort Worth, just north of Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Uh-huh.
So what had you in Joplin on May 22nd, 2011?
Well, the graduation, high school graduation, my nephew, a very special guy, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for him to be graduating from high school, so could not miss the opportunity to go up and be there for his graduation and
Sure.
celebrate with him and his family.
How long before graduation? So graduation is sort of in the late afternoon, early evening of May 22, 2011. Um, how long before that had you arrived in Joplin?
We arrived. I say we. My fiance at the time, she had traveled from Washington D.C. and came to Fort Worth, and then we traveled up there the day before. So we'd gotten into Joplin the day before and spent the night with my sister there in South Joplin.
In South Joplin. Had you been paying attention to, weather reports as the day begins or even the evening before, where people are saying, there likely to be some significant storms? Were you aware that, that a strong storm might be coming?
You know, not that I recall. The morning of the graduation, we were on the deck of her house there in South Joplin, and I'm kind of a weather watcher, sky watcher kind of guy, and
Hmm.
looked up at the clouds and just felt something. And I made a comment there as we were having breakfast. I said, it's going to storm today, and
Hmm.
we just kind of left it at that. But that was the only thing that I recall, just my own sensations, I guess, that gave any thoughts of a storm coming that day.
And for you, was that just sort of a passing thought and a passing, thing you said, or was it something that sort of stuck with you through the day?
No, just something that I said at that moment. My dad, he was always a cloud watcher and a sky watcher, and he would look up and he could forecast it's going to rain, because of the Mare's Tails clouds or whatever. And so I guess I just kind of picked that up over time and
Yeah.
do that quite often. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a statement, okay, we're probably going to have a storm. Looks like we might have a storm today.
Hmm.
Now, so we fast forward and you are then at the commencement ceremony, the graduation ceremony for Joplin High.
Hmm.
And before the commencement begins, do I have it right that you stepped out to order your fiance's ring? Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. My fiance and I, we got engaged in May, or May the 11th, I believe it was, that same year. And at the time of engagement, did not have a ring for her, so had a mock ring that we used until we could get the real ring. And so had been shopping and found a jeweler in Montana, and so I needed to get the ring ordered, so stepped out to make that order.
Make that
Yeah,
call.
yeah.
So the graduation ceremony happens, graduation ceremony ends. What's the first sense you have that, that something, not just a storm as you anticipated in the morning, but that something, I mean, a storm, but something, a very significant storm is coming? What's the first indication you had that, something pretty unusual was coming?
Yeah, I do not recall hearing anything in the auditorium where the commencement was taking place. I do not remember hearing any thunder or rain or anything like that. The first indication was really whenever we get ready to exit, and we were exiting the building. left the auditorium and went out to the lobby area, and doors were open, and we could see that it was, it was dark, and I think as we were approaching the doors to exit, when we heard the tornado sirens sounding. And that stopped us in our tracks, of course. And we looked around, and the sky was ominous, and it was kind of eerie. And so we went back in to the auditorium, along with a lot of other people, went back in to take shelter.
Wow. So you went back in to take shelter. Had you ever been through a tornado before?
Not through one. I had seen tornadoes from a distance before, but I had never actually been in a tornado. No.
So you can see that it's dark. It's obviously very stormy. The alarms are going off. You go back into the auditorium. A lot of other folks go into the auditorium. And then what? It just sort of, the siren stops, and it seems like maybe the danger has passed or something. How long would you say you're in the auditorium before you head back out?
I'd say 10 or 15 minutes. 10 or 15 minutes. And at the time, in 2011, we didn't have the smartphones we have today, so we couldn't really get the updates or the forecast or see live weather. I do not remember if anyone was really getting any alerts or alarms concerning the weather. We stayed there until we could hear that the alarms had stopped sounding, and went back out to the lobby, went back out outside, kind of assessed the situation, looked at it. My fiance, she was still very, very nervous about the condition and the situation. And I was not as concerned as she was. So at my beckoning, we made a mad dash to the car sitting in the parking lot. And by that time, a lot of people had already left. So the parking lot was not near as crowded as it was whenever we parked there initially. So a lot of people had already left the commencement and left the university.
Right, because the commencement is held at the State University in the north part of town. From what you remember, when you're in the auditorium, what was, for lack of a better word, what was the feeling in the room at that time? You said that your fiance felt a little anxious. Would you say that that's how people felt generally, or as people are there for 10, 15 minutes in the auditorium waiting for the alarms to go off, is there just casual chit chat? Is there concern? Do you have any recollections of just sort of what the vibe was in the auditorium?
Yeah, I don't recall any panic. I don't recall any terror. I don't recall. I think everyone was obviously concerned, and rightfully so. But I do not recall anything overly scared or panicky or anything like that.
And one of the things that's curious about your story, and there must be a good answer for it, but I don't know what it is why the alarm stopped. Because the tornado hadn't, I don't know what the timing is, but obviously as we proceed with your story, clearly the tornado has not passed through Joplin. So do you have any idea about that? Why did that siren stop?
I have no idea. Because when we went to the car, and it wasn't raining heavy. It wasn't raining lightly either, but so we made a dash to the car because of the rain. And that was probably maybe 50 yards. and got in the car and turned the radio on, obviously to listen to weather and find out what was going on. And I do recall at that time there were no sirens. There were only thing that I had was the reports that was coming on the radio, and being familiar with the country there, the location. The reports were talking about Galena, Webb City, Baxter Springs, and other locations, but Joplin wasn't being mentioned. And my fiance, of course, not familiar with the area at all, she just knew that all these places were nearby, but really couldn't put it in perspective where they were on the map or how far away they were from it. So she was very concerned just because of the reports and the warnings and the alerts that were coming out over the radio.
But you know the area, and so Webb Chapel, for example, is north of
Right.
Joplin. So, and then the sirens are off. So have you concluded in your own mind that Joplin itself is safe, especially if we head south?
For that moment in time, yes. And I could exit and get to my sister's house, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you do head south, and if I remember right, within a few minutes, the rain becomes so intense that the wipers are useless. Is that right?
That's true. That's true. It was just pelting down, and I might say I was in a rental car.
I
And we
have
arrived.
a
Pardon me?
brand new Chevrolet Impala. Is that right?
Yeah, brand new. Yeah.
Wow.
It was, we flew into Joplin and we're going to be there for just a couple of days. So no need to have a big car. So I had reserved a midsize or even a smaller car. When we got to the national car rental place, the lady, she was so apologetic that she said, "Mr. Millsap, sorry, you reserved a midsize. We're all out." I said, "We've had a run on cars. All I've got is this full size Chevy Impala.
Mm.
It's brand new." And she said, "Will that work?" And of course, I mean, yeah, okay. She said, "But same price." So it's kind of like an IQ test. Sure, sure.
Nice.
And I'll never forget as she handed the keys over to me, she said, "It's brand new. It's a really sweet ride." And
Wow.
that's how I took the keys. And so that's what we were in when we left the parking lot at the university and headed south on Duquesne to go to my sister's house.
So if you can walk us through, those minutes, however long that time is from now. You've left the university, you're heading south. And at one point the rain is so heavy that you think you should pull over. Is that right? What happens at that time?
Yeah, it was raining so hard, and the traffic wasn't heavy, but it was traffic that was leaving the parking lot, leaving the commencement to the university, and people had their flashers on, and the windshield wiper just was not keeping up with the rain. And I don't remember if it was at 13th Street or 16th Street. It became very evident that I had to get off the road because you couldn't really see the road, and certainly couldn't see oncoming cars coming to you. So I started looking for a place to pull off, and I saw a place that looked like it was a good place to get as far off the road as I could get because there was kind of a shoulder there. And I eased over, pulled over, wasn't completely out of the road, but again, had flashers and everything on. And sat there for just a moment, and something told me, don't stay here, don't stop here. Just keep going.
So you had a feeling that you should not stay in that location. Was that because of something your fiance said, something you saw, or just sort of a premonition that you had?
It was a premonition, but it was also as I observed and what I could see in the heavy rain. I could see a utility pole, and I could see power lines that was coming over the road, and I was parked right near the power pole, and very near, or if not under, the power lines. And 36 years of railroad engineering. I've learned a lot in recognizing risks and managing risks, and taking safe course, and just kind of situational awareness kind of thing. And it just didn't feel or seem right to stay right there.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, it turns out that someone else who moved into that, pretty much that same spot later, that there were actually fatalities at that location. Is that right?
Yes, we heard that the next day, that there were fatalities. A car had parked, I don't know if it was identical, same place where I had pulled off, but it was in the proximity of, and there were fatalities there when a utility pole came down over on top of a car.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we'll move now to where you park again, and this is when the tornado hits. And I understand we're talking about something that's 11 years ago. You said, from the beginning of this, your fiance, felt a bit anxious about the whole thing. What was going on inside the car at this point? Because obviously, you're in a storm that is probably more intense than anything you've experienced before, although there's a lot more to come, or perhaps not. But are you yourself feeling pretty anxious at this point as well? Is your fiance saying anything? Is she just quiet? What's going on inside the car at this point?
Well, obviously, we're both very quiet, and very alert, and I won't say white knuckles, but we're still driving in the heavy rain, and can't see, and so that's very tense moments. And I do not remember any kind of conversation or anything. It was just focus on the road, focus where we were going, and we were both just glued to the road out in front of us to make sure that we didn't hit anything. And when I saw it appeared to be a small parking lot off to the side with some kind of a business metal building there, but there was a parking lot, and I pulled in there, and again, it was just to get out of the rain. It was just the heavy rain, and as I remember, the winds had kind of, blowing rain and things, but it was still just the rain that we were trying to get out of, or get off the road, let it go by.
We do have a tornado on the ground.
This is a tornado. Yeah, this is a very dangerous situation. We cannot stress this enough. If you are in Joplin, please take cover.
That tornado just to the south of us on the ground. We can see it on our tower cam.
Absolutely. And
once again, this is producing a lot of precipitation. If you go outside, you may not be able to see it. Take shelter now. It looks like this is a pretty powerful tornado. You can see that it was taking out those transformers.
Absolutely.
It continues to push off to the east in Joplin. A very dangerous situation. Once again, very dangerous lightning, some very large hail in store also. So continue to take cover from this storm. We can see that tornado on the ground from our tower cam. We are continuing to track that.
No, it is certainly going off. Caitlin, I'm just looking out the door right now. Please do not go outside and try to track this storm, folks. You can't see anything outside. It is rain wrapped. This is a dangerous, dangerous situation at this point in time.
And then got in the this little parking lot and had the car parallel to Duquesne, facing south, and sitting there, and I saw this huge oak tree actually blow over and then start sliding.
Wow.
And I had never seen anything like that before, and that's when the reality hit that, hey, we're in a bad storm, we're in a tornado here. And that's when I screamed out to my fiance, get down. And she laid across the console of the car, and I laid my body over her body, and we just laid there for a bit, and then the roar began, and we could hear the roar, and the car started shaking, and I'm praying, stay on the ground, and
You mean the car?
the car, the car, and because I could just envision the car being picked up and blown into the tornado and tumbled or whatever.
We're good. I think we're gonna do it.
Through the course of that, and I don't know how long that was. It seemed like it was forever, but as the car was shaking, and then there would be these big jolts and the big thuds, and I knew that that was something hitting the car. And I'm hanging on to her, I'm laying over her, got my head down, and then all of a sudden I felt something that hit I heard this crash and felt something hit my back, and then the wind just really and I knew the windows had blown out of the car. And so I had debris hitting my shoulders and my back, and that's where I put my head further down in the floorboard over on the passenger side, and she had scooted over. So her head was kind of below the steering wheel, I guess. And we sat there, lay there, and it just this pelting, and it's just the car shaking, and the wind's coming through the car, and it was incredible moments to be in that car.
So when you're in the car, what's going through your mind, or which I realize is a stupid question because the answer probably is not very much, but just I'll just go ahead and ask that though. I mean, what is going through your mind? Are you sometimes, when people get into these kinds of situations where the possibility of their life ending, it's a good possibility, sometimes they'll say they just become very calm and accepting. In other cases, there's a sense of terror, panic. How would you describe yourself? How would you describe your fiance in those minutes?
I can say, for the first time in my life, I was at a point and a stage and a mindset where I was going to give my life for the life of another. And I was at peace and calm with that. I've never ever been in a situation where literally I've risked my life for someone else's, but in that case, I was bound and determined that I was going to be the human shield that was going to protect my fiance. And
Wow. Was it?
As I said, I was in constant prayer, just praying for safety, but I was praying for the car to stay on the ground, because I knew that if the car stayed on the ground, that we were going to be okay. And that was what's going through my mind.
Yeah.
In those moments.
So what I was going to ask then was that, had you kind of concluded in your mind that, I'm not going to make it through this, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure my fiance does, or not that?
Oh, no, I hadn't give up. No, I had not surrendered, and no. But I just, in my mind, I knew that if one of us didn't make it, it was going to be me. But I had not surrendered. I had not given up. I had not, no. I was in constant prayer, and I mean, and it's really odd and strange when you're in that situation, because as you've heard from so many, it wasn't a moment of panic. Matter of fact, my fiance, maybe jumping ahead here a little bit, after it was all said and done, the next day or the following day, kind of all the things kind of settled out, and the emotions, and and my fiance said, Steve said, I don't know how you did it. And I said, what? She said, through all the things that we did that day, from the time the storm hit to the time the next day, you were so calm and collected. You didn't show anxiety. You didn't show panic. You didn't show hopelessness. You didn't. And she was amazed and impressed, because my fiance, obviously, she had never been through anything like this, had never been, and she was not having the same sensation, same feelings that I was having. But what it caused me to reflect back on, and I shared this with her, I said, I really didn't think about that. I mean, I would just, and like we hear so many people do, so many people that are, heroes, and they go in and they do things, and that's what they're going to do. That's what they have to do. Mm-hmm. And, but in my case, I think it really goes back to my career at the railroad, and the disasters, the derailments, the accidents, the grade crossings, the terrible accidents that I've seen, and picking up the pieces and putting it all back together to get trains going again. And I think it was a combination of that all prepared me for that moment in time to do and to react and act as I did.
And as you described in what you've written, when you describe the tornado going by, you describe it as, a lot of people do. I guess the only available similar sound is of a train just going by, maybe 10 feet away.
Yes.
And I get you would know that sound more than anybody, given your.
I know that sound very well, and it's very descriptive. It is right on as far as the sound, and It's amazing. It was amazing how long it lasted. You know, it's not momentary. It is just, it seems like it's going on for,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
long time.
Were all of the windows in the car blown out?
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of debris was in the car? Now the storm has passed. You know, and you're shaking this stuff off and you're seeing what's in the car. What kind of stuff is in there?
Okay. It's when the roar ends and the winds stop, and it's all of a sudden it's kind of a calm, and we lay there for a little bit and know that, you know, and so that it's going to be, it's okay to raise up. So as I raise up, I had of course glass from the car. I had plywood, pieces of plywood. I had tree branches or limbs, nothing big. Had insulation from a building that was laying on top of me. So as I was raised up, all that was, you know, I was raising up from under that. And the back seat in the car was just filled with paper, incredible amount of paper. And I think the things that really surprised me were the pieces of plywood and the insulation. Fortunately, there were no pieces of metal, corrugated metal or anything like that. So
Wow.
I attribute that to prayer, you know,
Wow.
and just for safety. Yeah.
Were you injured at all? I mean,
No. My fiance and I both, we after we got out of the car, I went to once it, and that was the strangest thing when we raised up, and of course we had all debris that was coming off from us, and we raised up, and as we raised up, the first sounds, you know, it's quiet now. It was really quiet. It was just unbelievable quiet after the roar and after the storm. But the first sounds that we heard were a baby crying and a scream, someone screaming.
wow.
And so raised up and heard those sounds. And what really, I think, that I remember the greatest was to have that view of what was no more. We were sitting in an area that had been flattened. It was just leveled. And here we were in this zone of total destruction. And, but yeah, what was no more. And, it was a microwave tower. It had folded over. See that? Of course, utility poles and trees and all that was down. Well, you know, we've all seen the pictures of what it looks like. But to raise up, I mean, when we parked there, it was a normal place, and within minutes, it was gone. And we had survived right in the middle of it. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm getting this image in my mind. The storm has passed. You and your fiance both get up. You've got all this debris that's covering you, that's falling off, paper and wood, you've said, and little branches and insulation. Do you remember the first thing either of you said to one another after that had happened?
I don't. I don't. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure we looked at each other
Yeah.
And we looked, and it had to be probably more of a look than any kind of verbal, but it was probably just that look of wow, wow.
And did you sit there for a while in sort of dumbfounded silence, or did you begin to respond immediately to things that were happening outside the car?
Didn't sit there very long. Sit there for a little bit, and all of a sudden could hear more screams. And I think there was one baby, could have been two babies that were crying. And I felt compelled to obviously get out of the car. I need to get out of the car. So I went to open my door, and my door wouldn't open. And so I could see the mirror was hanging down, the rearview mirror hanging down by wires. And again, tried to open the door and wouldn't open. And so I asked my fiance if hers would open, and which hers would have been facing west, and hers opened with no problem. So she opened her door, and she got out first, and stood up, and of course she was shaking all the debris off of her, and and then I crawled across the console and across the seat and brushing things out of the seat as I went out the passenger door. And as I recall, that was our first time it was our first time to actually stand up and on the ground. And I remember us checking each other, which we had already checked each other, asked questions, are you okay? You okay? But then we did it again, standing up, and we just looked. And as I remember, we went into a heavy, just embracing hug, just holding each other.
Wow. Who was the first person that you interacted with aside from your fiance after?
Once we got out there was a conversion van that was sitting in the parking lot where we had parked, and there was a family, and that's where the baby crying was coming from. So we checked with them. I checked with them to make sure, see if they were okay, and they were, of course, panicked. But yeah, they were okay.
Wow.
And so I came back and kind of, as I remember, kind of assessed the car, and I started thinking, okay, well, and the car was still running. Never shut the car off. And to be honest, I don't know during the tornado if I had it in park or I had it in drive and just had my foot on the brake. I don't know.
Wow.
But anyway, the car was in park, and so we left it running, obviously. And then, assessed the car, and my door wouldn't open because it had been bashed in. So one of the big thuds and the rocks that we felt was something bashing the driver's side door. The trunk was all bashed in. Something heavy had hit it and bashed it in. The whole car was just pelted with divots from hail, from debris, whatever. But surprisingly, the headlights were still intact. All the windows were out, like we've said. But so kind of assess that, and okay, now it's time for how we're going to get out of here. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to take a little walk here, and I don't remember my fiance walking with me. She may have stayed back with the people that were in the conversion van. But I started walking south up 20th Street, up Duquesne to 20th Street, and as I started that little walk, I saw a lady coming down Duquesne, coming my way, and she was wearing a flowing formal gown, and she was kind of wobbling and just having trouble walking, and so sobbing. And so I rushed up and got her. And she was a young lady. She was just, of course, drenched with water and everything. And she had survived the tornado, and her car up at the roundabout at Duquesne and 20th Street. And she had gotten out of her car and for whatever reason was coming down Duquesne, and I grabbed her and put my arm around her and put her arm up over my shoulder and just walked with her.
Wow.
And took her down, and she was sobbing. She was shaking. She was just shaking. I don't know if it's from trauma or if it was, cold and she was wet. And, I mean, she just had, like I said, a formal gown on. So took her to the car, and we were able to, we opened the back doors and cleaned all the debris out of the back seat, and was able to get her in the back seat of the car, and had a sports jacket that I had worn to the graduation, and covered her up with that, just give her some cover and some warmth. And she sat there, and she had her phone, and she was sobbing and shaking, and she was trying to call her parents, her family, and I tried to also call my family, but cell phones obviously weren't working. But it was somewhere in that time that we discovered that although the cell phones weren't working, you could text. And I still don't understand the technology and how through all of that, the cell phone service was out, but you could text. And so she was able to get information to her family where she was. And by that time, I was able to contact my sister. But I recognized the young lady after we got her down and got her in the car and everything. And we had seen her just maybe an hour and a half prior to that. She was a valedictorian of the class, and she had given an incredible speech of hope and promise to her class, to her classmates, and but she might have had a cut or two on her, but she was not injured to any extent. But yeah, it was amazing. I'll never forget seeing her coming down Duquesne all by herself. Yeah. Wow. So I was able to help her, and then got her in the car, and so started back up to assess the road to see if I could drive out. And I knew there were trees down to the north on Duquesne, so I knew I couldn't go that way. So started walking up to 20th Street, and again on that walk, I see this man, and he's carrying a lady, and he's crying out for help. Help me, help me. So I go to him, and he's a middle-aged man carrying his elderly mother, and she's in kind of a gown, pajama, sleeping gown, and he had, I think, sweatpants on or whatever, and he's carrying her. They're both fine, but they're both shaking, and again he's stumbling coming down. You kidding? And So I take his mother in my arms and I said, follow me. And I carry her down to the car. And again, we clear out debris and put his mother in the back seat with Victoria, I think her name is. And his name was David. I don't remember his mother's name right now, but they had literally crawled out the front window of their house that was like 2 blocks away. And the tornado had taken the roof off their house and pretty well destroyed their house, except the walls were still up. And they survived the tornado and exited the house through the window. And at which time he proceeded to pick his mother up and start carrying her down the road. And that's when when I met him. So about that time, Victoria's dad and brother, they were able to walk in. They walked in from the south, from the north, up Duquesne, and they got their daughter and sister and proceeded to take her away and take her to where their vehicle was, which I don't know, but so I knew she was in safety and she was with family. So that left David and his mother, and so got them in the car, and I walked back up to 20th Street and got up and kind of assessed the situation. I could see wires were down, but the road was free of debris, and so I thought, I think I can drive out. So with David and his mother in the back seat, and my fiance in the passenger seat. Of course, I've got to, every time I get in and out of the car, I've got to go through the passenger seat over the console to get into the driver's seat. So we proceeded to drive out, and my sister, her and her husband, of course, they got word, and I was able to convey to them where we were, and they were trying to get to us, and they were longtime residents of Joplin, so they knew Joplin very, very well. And but I didn't realize that they were trying to get to us, and so we left, and they finally got to where we were, but it was, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes after we had left. But we proceeded out just trying to find roads that we could get out, and why I just looking for open roads. And went east and then was able to go north, and kind of knowing the area. I don't know why I went back west, other than must just been I could see an open road, and went west on the north side of Joplin. And of course, there was all kinds of emergency vehicles now that was coming and going, and lots of things happening, and ended up driving over. It was dark now. I'm driving over to near Galena, if not Galena. We were near Galena, and here the four of us in this beat up Chevrolet Impala with all the windows out, and we're driving, and driving slow, of course, because of the wind and everything, and pull in a gas station, and I found a gas station open, which that was answered prayers too, because I didn't want to run out of gas, and didn't know how long I was going to be out trying to get safety. And so pulled in and got gas, filled up with gas, and went in the convenience store and got some drinks and some snacks. for everybody. And then we proceeded to drive in south from Galena, got to I-44, and then it was clear sailing into my sister's home. And
So I want to ask you, often combat veterans, I've talked to Vietnam veterans they're in combat, and then a week later, they're in Montana. And it's just this surreal disconnect. I was in, some jungle in South Vietnam a week ago getting shot at, and now I'm on a farm in Iowa, or now I'm in the cereal section at some grocery store in Minnesota, and just sort of the unreal quality of that. Is that how it felt? Because everything you've just experienced, but now you're in a functioning gas station. You can go in and buy the drinks, you buy snacks for everybody. Did that strike you at the time as, this is surreal? It's like there's a world that exists a few miles from here, and then there's this world that's normal.
No,
Did that strike you at the time, or?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't at the time, because I was still on a mission. I was still on a mission to, get everybody to safety. And David and his mother, during the time that we were together from the very get-go, and then when we left, and they kept referring to my fiance and I as angels. You guys are angels. And I numerous times I said no. I said, well, we may be in a way, but you're getting ready to meet the real angel. Referring to my sister. My sister and her caring, loving, giving character in her way, and just I knew that when we got to her house that it was going to be okay. It was going to be okay. We hadn't gotten there yet, so no, I had not ramped down, or it was still a mission.
I want to hear about the time at your sister's house, but at the gas station, obviously your car has had some trouble. It's astonishing to me that it's still running.
Yeah, it is.
And, I'm reluctant to make what will sound like a stupid comment, but I wonder if the Chevrolet people would, I'm sure they would like to hear this story about this car that just took an unbelievable beating, and yet somehow you're still driving it around.
Yeah.
That is impressive, So your car obviously has just been beaten to a pulp, and yet somehow it's still going. You're at this gas station filling it up with gas. Did you get any queries? What happened? Did you have any interaction with people at the gas station about what is going on?
Yeah, there were, as I recall, there were quite a few people there getting gas, and I think some of it was out of panic, some of it was, just understanding what had just happened in the area. So people being prudent and thinking we'll get gas. And yeah, there were comments and people looking at the car and thinking, what in the hell? Where did you guys come from? And I couldn't really at that moment relate to where we were in the tornado. I knew that we were in the tornado, but I did not realize that we were right in the very middle of it. It was we were in the center of it, and nor that understood that a lot of debris that came, that hit the car, that impelled the car, and it was on us, was from the Walmart that was just upwind of where we sat, that was completely destroyed. So a lot of debris was coming from from the Walmart and other places, obviously. So, but I just knew that we had witnessed and survived a tornado. And
What was there anyone else at the gas station who had also emerged from the tornado, or were you?
No, I was the only one. Yeah, that I recall. I don't recall anyone else. Yeah.
What happened at your sister's house? So you get to your sister's house, David and his mom are with you and your fiance.
Yeah.
Just describe that.
Well, we drove in the driveway and parked the car. And I don't recall how my sister knew that we were approaching or getting close, or I think it was just text. We were able to text her and let her know. Well, when we got there, it had to be midnight or something like that, because it was a slow drive around in a car because of the no windows and the debris that was on the dash and everything else. But we got there, and as I recall, they had positioned themselves where they were watching out the window. When we pulled in, the door opened up.
Wow.
They came out, and my brother-in-law and sister, and immediately grabbed us and started leading us in the house. And I think they even brought out blankets to put on us because they knew, we had been wet, and got in the house, and they had prepared food and had food there ready because obviously they knew that we hadn't eaten anything really of substance since before the commencement. And so welcomed us with blankets and had the rooms. Had my fiance and I, we had a room there already because we'd stayed there the night before, and they had rooms for David and for his mother, and had clothes, dry clothes laid out, and
Wow.
ready to put them to bed, and after a shower and hot shower, and then yeah.
And so David and his mom, they stayed there that night.
That night and for several nights thereafter, until they finally were able to find, I don't know if it was FEMA housing or a friend, but I think they were there 3 or 4 nights. It might have been 5 nights that they stayed there.
Did you sleep at all that night?
I don't recall.
No.
I don't recall. I'm sure I did. I don't know. I was probably, if I did, I probably did just out of pure exhaustion.
Yeah.
Pure exhaustion. Yeah.
And this will probably seem like a stupid question, but for some reason it's on my mind. Did she still have your coat when she left?
I don't think so, because when she left with her parents, and I think I put my coat on David's mother. I put my coat on her, I believe. Yeah. I don't remember Victoria. I can see her walking away with her dad and her brother, but I don't remember her wearing my coat at that time. So
That became the coat for David's mom.
Yeah.
What did you do the next day?
Oh, wow. So this is where the stories get strange. So when we met David and his mom, after we got them into safety, got them in the car, David was very, what's the word? embarrassed, conscientious that he didn't have his dentures.
Mm.
He left the house when the storm hit. He had his dentures out, and he left the house without his dentures. And he just repeatedly kept apologizing for not having his dentures. Well, it didn't matter to us, but to him it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So through the whole ordeal, and when we get to my sister's house, that's one of the first things that David talks about is his lack of having his dentures. And so promised him the next day that we would go back to the house. And him and his mom, they had some miniature horses that they kept, and they had a little shed, a little barn. They kept these 2 miniature horses. They had a little wagon that they would pull, and one of them's name was Tiny, and I don't remember the other's name, but of course they were concerned about their miniature horses, and they had a dog, and they had vacated the house out of panic and trauma without really checking on the pets. And so they were concerned about the pets. So I promised David and his mom as we were making the drive to my sister's house. And then once we got there, I said, okay, tomorrow we're going to go back. We'll go back and check on the pets, and said, see if we can find your dentures. So next morning, got up, my sister had a wonderful breakfast and everything, and before we went, obviously they had, the only clothes they had on were the clothes they had on. And his mother was wearing, like I said, a long sleep gown, and David had sweatpants and a t-shirt, I think. So we knew we need to go buy some essentials. So we went to Neosho, to Walmart Neosho, to buy clothing for David and for his mother, and some toiletries and some necessities and things like that. So they, as you can imagine, it's one of them cases where they put the clothes on that they bought right there at the store. So and went in and wore the clothes out the door that we had just bought, and then proceeded to go on back to their house. So we got to their house, and this was, of course, my first time to be back there, and so we were able to drive in. And their house was probably a block, 2 blocks east on 20th Street. And we obviously all the destruction and, the trees, but we pulled up their house, and the I don't know why we couldn't use a door. There was some reason. I think the porch had fallen down on the steps, I think. So the only way to get in the house easily was to go through the very window that they had exited out whenever they exited the house. So my sister, she was with us, and my fiance, and David, and his mother. And so we proceed to climb up over and into the house. And so everybody's thinking, okay, we got to find David's dentures. And there's some debris on the floor, and it's one of them oddities of a tornado where, it wasn't like the ceiling and the roof crashed in and it's laying on the floor. The floor was pretty well intact, and there wasn't a whole lot on the floor. There was debris there, but wasn't a lot of debris because apparently the tornado had taken the roof and the ceiling off.
Wow.
So actually had rooms and had the hallway. David goes back in the bathroom, and in the bathroom, sitting on a sink, was a glass with water and denture cleaning solution, and his dentures were in that glass sitting on the sink, and he had another glass there with a toothbrush, and it was sitting on the sink. Now that's surreal. I mean, that's all of a sudden whenever it's like, what, And he, he was just so proud, but we went there thinking, well, we'll never find these dentures. And, yeah, and then went into the little breakfast or their little dining room area, which is kind of a small house, and there was a table, and sitting on the table were two plates. Two plates were sitting on the table with flatware, silverware sitting there on the table. And there was a china cabinet up against the wall. And in that china cabinet was the plates and bowls and everything still in the china cabinet, you know.
Wow. Just the randomness of the tornado.
For sure, for sure. Then we kind of surveyed that. And then, of course, now the mission was to check on the pets. So went to the backyard, and the barn was gone, and there was no signs of the miniature horses, and the dog, couldn't find the dog. Called and called and called for the dog, called for the horses, and as kind of surveying, of course, there's debris everywhere in the lots, and and I ran across this V8 engine. There's a motor, an engine that's laying on the ground, and it's got wires, I'd say probably 25, 30 feet of wires that's strung out behind it. It's kind of like, almost like the tail of a kite almost. So you got this engine, and I'm thinking, well, that David must have had that in his shop or his garage or barn or something. And so I didn't think much about it other than, wow, that's kind of and it's just laying there all by itself, there's this engine laying. So we went back the next day, again, looking, surveying, trying to find the animals. And I went over, and this engine, again, it had kind of puzzled me about this engine. And all of a sudden it dawned on me when I looked at the engine closer, it was the inboard motor for a boat, that apparently the boat had been picked up in the tornado, destroyed, and this motor fell out of the sky. That it just, and there was, I saw some pieces of fiberglass that was laying around it and everything, but it was just, all of a sudden, I think at that moment, it just hit me about how, ungodly powerful that this storm was. And yeah.
And yet in the house, just a 30-second walk away or less, the
30,
the china cabinet is undisturbed.
Undisturbed, and dentures are in a glass. Yeah. And then we were looking under the debris, looking for animals, found there was a ceiling joist that had a light socket mounted to it. And in that light socket was a light bulb, and the light bulb was intact and wasn't shattered or broken or anything. It was weird, really weird.
Did you ever find the pets?
Found unfortunately, one of the miniature horses was crushed. Finally found one, and one was alive. So one deceased, one was alive, and did find the dog. The dog, I think they found that, I don't know, 2 or 3 blocks away, which my sister immediately took it in, and she has connections to a friend that has a boarding house for pets, and so out of the kindness of their heart, they took the dog in and boarded the dog for I don't know how long to take care of the dog. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I think I remember you writing, and just a few more questions, and we'll wrap it. But if I remember right, you had a brief interaction with another man who said that someone in his family was hurt.
Yes.
But in that situation, you weren't really able to help. Is that right? What was that situation?
It was right before. It was right between Victoria and David and his mother, a guy, he comes running down Duquesne, and he's screaming, just screaming top of his lungs, help me, I need help, I need help. And so he came, and I confronted him, and I said, what do you need? What? He said, I don't know if it's, I think he said it was his wife, and she had been impaled by a fence post, and was wanting me to help get her either off the fence post or get the fence post out of her body, and was just begging for help to deal with that situation. And I just knew that was above my pay grade. You know, that's not something that I could even fathom, trying to how to do that and how to do that properly. So I said, and I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I said, I have no medical experience or expertise. I said, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. So he left me and went on screaming for help, looking for somebody that could help him. And I told him, I said, the emergency vehicles will be here very soon, hopefully very soon. And so that's just wait till they get here. But
And as this was unfolding, you have the interaction with Victoria, with him, with David and his mom. Are the emergency vehicles showing up? You're hearing them, you're seeing them?
yeah, we're hearing some sirens. We're hearing some things from a distance. Nothing real close yet, but obviously, you reflect back on it and the size, the magnitude of this storm, and what happened at the hospital, what happened to the school, what happened, I don't know in that moment, the emergency response people, where the priorities were, where they started, how long it would take to get over on the west side where we were. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but there was presence and evidence of emergency vehicles that was responding.
Yeah. When you were at David's house, you see the engine. What other sorts of things do you remember observing just in the day after the tornado? People just going through the rubble. What sort of memories do you have of that?
Yeah, people kind of going through the rubble, and my sister, my fiance, and myself, we went back and helped. We went in David and his mother's house and boxed up and packaged up things to move out of the house, and there were just others in the neighborhood that were doing the very same thing. They were just going through the rubble and picking up the pieces.
How would you describe what you saw in those people? Was it kind of was it generally sort of a calm thing? Were they just sort of resigned? How would you describe just how people were carrying themselves in that situation?
I think by day 2, day 3, the trauma was kind of over. Reality was reality, and as I recall, I don't know. I don't know if I would say if they were calm, but they certainly were not in panic, or there wasn't. I didn't see a lot of grief. I didn't see a lot of trauma. I think it's that resilience that just that we have as human beings, where this is what we have, and we're thankful we're alive. And I think there were, I think there was some of that in the air, you know, for the people that were around there. Yeah, we're thankful to be alive.
Your car is a rental, so you have to, you know, hand it back to its owners. Just tell us about that.
So called National and told them what had happened, and I asked. I said, you know, I think I sent them some pictures. I think at that time, you know, our technology was a BlackBerry, you know, it was, so didn't have all the features and all the things we've got today with our smartphones. But I think I sent a picture and I asked, do you want me to drive it over? Let me drive it back over. And they said, no. And so they sent a tow truck over to pick it up. And I think they had an assessor there at the same time. And rather rapidly, they totaled the car out. They totaled out, and it was not to be driven again. And so my brother and sister-in-law, they had multiple cars, so I didn't need a rental car anymore. So we just let the car go. And one of the realities that sits in after an incident like this is insurance. And the rental car company, their insurance came back and tried to make me at fault for parking the car in the middle of a tornado. And so I was going to be responsible, liable for the replacement of that brand new car. And I don't know exactly how it all turned out, but you know, my insurance company, they said, no, this was the act of God. He didn't purposefully park this car in the middle of a tornado. But there was the two insurance companies arguing about who was going to pay for this total out brand new car. And I thought that was kind of humorous. Take on
Sure.
on that sweet ride. Yeah, it was a sweet ride.
The lady said to you, in the end, were you basically able just to walk away from it?
Yeah.
Just two more questions. So you fly out of Joplin, and you know, in what you've written, you see just the astounding wide swath of devastation.
Yeah.
You know, your wheel's up now and you're over Joplin and you're looking down seeing this. What's going through your mind?
Just, I mean, it just to have that view, and I don't know, I don't remember cable service. I don't know what kind of TV service we had at my sister's house. I don't remember seeing the news coverage and everything that the rest of the country was seeing, the rest of the world was seeing. I don't remember seeing that until got up in the air and flew over and looking down to see, and it was just, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. And again, it gave me reflections of and what we had just been through, and of Thanksgiving that, you know, we were in that. And then started hearing the stories, kind of jumping around here a little bit, but the devastation, not only in property, but in lives lost. And reflecting back on a lot of things, reflecting back on being at that commencement, and my sister and her husband had got us great seats where we could sit right there as the graduates were coming off the stage with their diploma. The diplomas, and of course they knew many of the kids because they had me in my house and they were friends with Lucas, and so they were high-fiving kids and hugging, and being there and hearing Victoria's speech, and I forget how many students lost their lives in the tornado. It was in the, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, the students. So I started processing and thinking about all of this, and you know, here we were at a time of celebration, enjoyment, and little did we know that moments later.
Wow.
We'd be caught up in a storm that people would lose their lives. People would lose their lives, and it just causes reflection back on how fragile life is, and you know,
Go ahead.
Yes.
You may have just answered this question away, but you say in what you've written that the lives of you and your fiance were changed forever as a result of this experience. How would you describe that change?
In different ways. For me, I think in the end it made me a better person. I think, and which leads into a lot of things that I've done since then in serving in various ways, relationships. I'm an engineer by degree, and you know, engineers aren't typically into relationships and real deep relationships, but those moments that we spent in Joplin and those few people. And I've said many times, it reminds me of the starfish story, you know, as we flew over and I looked down, and then we got hearing all the reports, and you got to think about all the thousands of people that, you know, I wish I could have done something for them. I wish I could have done more for more people than what I did. But, you know, God just, he put those few people in my path, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful. But I think, you know, in my life, it's, like I said, I've been through a lot of disasters in my life, and in the railroad, and flooding on major rivers, and I've seen communities washed away in major floods. I've seen a lot of terrible things, and been part of all that. But up until Joplin, it was more the material things. It was more, it wasn't, I just didn't have a connection with the actual lives, and how it affects people's lives. You know, being an engineer, being a problem solver, and doing what I did in my career, I'm one of those people that always don't second guess, but always say, what could I have done differently? What could I have done differently? And who knows? Who knows if we would have stayed there at the university, if we would have stayed, taking shelter longer, if we hadn't, started, who knows what would have happened. But I guess that's the thing I think about is, could this have been prevented? The experiences that my fiance and I that we experienced could have been prevented by being a little more cautious, being a little more, just waiting and a little more patient. But having said that, we wouldn't have been where we were to help the 3 people that we helped. So, I think all in all, I think it's a good story. I think I'm just thankful. I'm just so thankful that we survived and here to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you doing that. And I hope that others who made it through this storm or, other very difficult circumstances, I hope they'll hear what you say. And will be encouraged to hear their stories as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time yourself and the work that you and your partner's doing to pull this together. Yeah, I think it's certainly worthy of remembering. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.